Hi, I'm Dr. Don Fisher. This is Dr. Rex Swanda. We've been asked by the Working Committee of the New Mexico Supreme Court to provide an overview of observable signs of professional impairment. It's our intent today to help viewers understand a few things to take home in our messages. First of all, we'd like to help you identify warning signs and changes in behavior that might signal some kind of impairment that needs assistance. We'd like to demonstrate some of the barriers that may occur to intervening or seeking that kind of assistance. We'd also like to share with you some resources that are available to you if these issues come up. And lastly, we'd like to help you understand that your role is not necessarily to figure out the cause or corrective action for these issues, but rather to assist in identifying problems in your profession. Dr. Swanda, tell us about some of the common warning signs for these behavioral impairment issues.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so that really is the issue. How would a person know if a colleague was having a serious problem that they needed to bring to the attention of that person? Really what we're talking about are significant changes in behavior that are accompanied by poor insight or lack of awareness. And that lack of insight is the critical feature here. Obviously, if a person has good insight, then and ability to perceive themselves the way others see them, then that person can self-monitor and make changes, fix the problem, probably before anyone else recognizes it. And they can seek out assistance on their own without anyone coming to them. So we're talking about folks who lack that insight. And so some of the changes and problematic behavioral issues that you might see in a colleague could show up as changes in emotion. Maybe more emotion with increased emotional volatility, quick temper, uncharacteristic displays of anger would be a tip-off, and that would obviously be concerning, disruptive emotional changes. You might also see less emotion with a person uncharacteristically appearing to be less engaged, more apathetic, kind of listless. I think the obvious changes that an attorney might be very concerned about in a colleague would be changes in professional behavior. For example, timeliness, being chronically late for appointments when this hadn't been a problem in the past, missing a hearing. Obviously, that's not a good thing. And declines in quality of a person's work. You might see poorly written briefs or missing details, poor summations. A few of the other changes that might come to your awareness but might be a little harder to pick up on would be any kind of psychosocial stressors, changes in relationships, changes in financial problems, and those are always, of course, difficult to know if that could be a cause of some of the problems you might see at work or a consequence of the same cognitive impairment or other condition that's getting in the way of everything in the person's life. So, Dr. Fisher, maybe you could tell us about some of the changes in a person's medical and physical status to watch for.
Right. Dr. Swanda, in addition to those behavioral observations that you can make, there are also physical observations that people may manifest that signal some kind of ongoing problem that would create these behaviors. For example, you could observe rapid weight gain or weight loss. There may be tremor. There may be facial drooping, changes in coordination and dexterity, changes in balance and strength. These are observable signs that there is some sort of condition going on. You don't know what, but there's something going on that may signal a problem. Yeah, you can see changes in a person's energy level, their interest in socialization, for example. You can see their general hygiene. They may have gone from being a meticulous dresser to someone that whose glasses are askew. They may have spots on their clothing, something that is an obvious change that you can see. Sometimes it may manifest in complaints rather than visual observations. People may start complaining more about their pain, their sleep disturbances, insomnia, or sleeping too much, headaches, nausea, and being overly focused on those things. Serious conditions such as blurred or double vision are particularly noteworthy.
The biggest general follow-up and point to make in discussing this with a colleague, though, would be to encourage them to go see their medical provider and get a general medical follow-up. And I think maybe you could speak to those issues, how that would be helpful.
Well, in an ideal situation, most of us have a relationship with a primary care provider. And typically that's a situation where I have some trust. I pick that person to begin with. And they have some insight, they have a background about me, at least from a medical, and often from primary care providers, they know something about my social situation as well. So they can objectively and independently look at my situation, interview me. They're trained to look at medical conditions that can create these behavioral conditions. They can look at behavioral problems, psychosocial problems like anxiety, depression, dementia, for example, that would lead to these kind of behaviors. They're also grounded in substance abuse problems. So they're really a good quarterback, really, to start the evaluation and make referrals and then tie it all together. In a little bit less than ideal situation, if they don't have a primary provider, they can get one. They can start with a new person that can look at them objectively. It may require getting some prior medical records to understand what's been going on. But again, the medical providers are a good place to start when someone has that insight and they're willing to take that next step. Dr. Swanda, does anybody know that they're normal or not? How do they know if they're impaired or not, rather than just being, some of the minor changes with age?
Well, that's a great question. I find in our clinic a lot of people come in who are almost self-referred. They come into their physician worried, doc, I've been forgetting things. I go to the shopping and I forget things at the store. The key thing is when that individual is the one who's doing the most worrying about themselves, that's probably less likely to be a serious condition like Alzheimer's. When I get more concerned is when the spouse or the family are pointing out problems of forgetting that the individual is not aware of and seems totally unaware when it's brought to their attention. Some of the typical changes with normal aging would be, kind of run-of-the-mill forgetting of names of people that people who are familiar. It's really frustrating for the person because they know the person and they know they should know the name. The dementia side of that is running into someone you should know and having no idea who they are. So it's not just forgetting the name, but not even knowing who they are. So there's really no embarrassment. There's no insight that they should have known that person. Another example of normal aging might be misplacing a common object, misplacing a wallet or a tool. On the dementia side, we're more concerned that when that person doesn't know how to use that tool anymore. So there are a lot of examples like that. Forgetting items on a shopping list usually is just sort of normal memory problems of any age. Frankly, we should write things down. Not knowing that you went shopping at all, or going shopping and getting lost on the way back in a familiar area. That's the more pathological concern.
Dr. Swan, tell us about some of the barriers to intervention.
Right. I think that's one of the biggest points. The biggest single barrier, I think, is our natural tendency to cover up for someone, to normalize and really just assume that things are more normal than they might be. So what you might find a person doing in the category of enabling is to gradually pick up and cover for your colleague by taking on I'll pick up that case because John's not feeling so well today, or over the past month he's going through a lot. But what I would recommend is for someone who's concerned about a colleague to use the kind of resentment. As soon as you become aware that you're feeling a little resentful, pick up on that and ask yourself, so why is this colleague who used to be able to cover everything, why are they having difficulty? Why am I having to pick up more, or why aren't they pulling their share in the office? A couple of other barriers would be just simply making excuses for the person in the way of, well, he's under a lot of pressure, or she's going through some relationship issues, or I know there's some financial things going on, and so being a little too quick to just attribute problems to something that you may not really have enough information to know about. So we're just really talking about asking questions in a helpful way, not in a gossipy way, and trying to be alert to problems that the person might not have insight about.
Dr. Swan, give us some recommendations for and some resources for interventions and follow-up.
Well, once you've become aware that a colleague might be having some problems, I think the most respectful and important thing is to find a way to have a direct and private conversation with that individual. It's really the most ethical thing to do because that really has the potential to help an individual with partial insight take some steps to independently address the issues. I think asking yourself, how would I want to be treated in that situation, is a good guide.
There are additional resources like the Lawyers and Judges Assistance Program, and in a worst case scenario, the disciplinary board. Dr. Swan, give us some take-home messages.
Sure. I think the most important issue for people who are concerned about a colleague's behavioral changes is first to recognize, does that person seem to have insight? Are they aware of the problems that are pretty obvious to you? And the second piece to recognize is that if that person has insight, they'll fix their problems on their own, most likely. They won't need a lot of prodding from you. So if they're lacking insight, that's the time to intervene with a direct conversation with the person, if you can. If you can't, then whatever way you can find to recommend to that individual to follow up with a medical workup and use that as a starting point is the best recommendation. If you can't have that direct conversation, if you can't get them to see their physician, then that's the point when you probably need to follow up with the Lawyer and Judges Assistance Program.
Thanks, Dr. Swanda. We want to leave you with a few resources that we're going to show on a slide. Thank you for your attention, and good day or good evening.